This thing is rolling again. Hey, what? Blah, blah. Hey, good morning and welcome to another Tempo Tuesday. My name is Pat Fellows, and I am joined again today by Naraj Vora from the Stride Shop. Naraj, good morning. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We jumped in last week with some ideas and just getting a little bit of information on who you are, what you guys do, and where you are, but we really didn't dive in, I don't want to say to specifics, but we didn't tackle like a topic. We just kind of talked about a little bit about philosophy and introduced, your business and whatnot. But today, and the big thing that I'm excited about is really to talk about running, right? Talk about the reason you have this business and the opportunities you have to work with people and those things. So today, everybody comes out with episodes and it's going to be like the top 3 things that you can do to, and we're going to try that.
Yeah.
We may end up at 3 or 4.
Yeah.
We may end up at 2 really deep dives. You never know.
Yeah.
But I like to try, and I wanted to today discuss from your perspective, both as a coach, both as a PT and somebody that's been working with runners, some of the things that you found are great to run injury free. Like, what are the things that are most important to you? I know I have my ideas. I've been coaching for maybe 13 years, 12 years, something like that, a long time.
Mm-hmm.
At least running, but I also worked in the running shoe business for 8 years. Yeah. And so within that, you get philosophies, you deal with a lot of people with injuries, and you get opinions and this and that. But, and again, these don't have to be, this is the number one, no sort of countdown, right? Because it's probably specific. I may never have any sort of injury ever, then all of a sudden get, I don't know, a plantar. Yeah. And what running injury-free from plantar is different than running injury-free from patella tendonitis, right? So as I know you see a lot of the common injuries, but what do you think? I know what I think one of my most important things is. What's one of the first things you look at for people to run injury-free?
So, probably everything falls under the umbrella of how each individual approaches their running, and that I forget who this came from, but it was basically 24/7 52. And that basically is saying running is not a game of days or weeks or even months, right? It's the consistency each day throughout a week over the course of a year. And for most people, several years, right? And so I think a lot of what we see in our field in physical therapy is a lot of time poor management or load error or volume error or those kinds of things, right? It's not because you don't know, because I'm guilty of this. I'm sure you have been as well. It's like we're feeling great. We're going to go an extra couple of miles, or we're going to go a little harder than we were supposed to, and something flares up, right? So things happen, but I think for the most part, if we're practical about how we approach running, about our goals, about what we think can be helpful to us, we'll probably do okay. And that's generally what keeps people out of trouble, is being pretty practical about their approach to running. To get a little bit more specific, I would say that inside of that consistency part, it's what your routine is and how you adapt simply to life. So a lot of people that we see, whether they be high schoolers or whether they be 40-something-year-olds with families, what happens when you don't get a good night's sleep and you're scheduled to run at 5 a.m.? Or do you need to go out and push the needle and run 800s so you can't walk anymore? Or, do you push that back and save it for another day? Or, if you're low in motivation, do you drag yourself out of bed and make yourself do it? Or do you hit the snooze button and skip that workout? And what's good or bad, but how you approach those things in terms of consistency, I think, is really important. And consistently running, but also consistently doing the things to take care of your body.
Well, I find especially I alluded in the last episode you and I did about coaching. I coach adults and I coach kids. Mm-hmm. And the big thing, you know, with the kids, we usually run Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday, we do a really shorter run, 20, 30 minutes at the most.
Yeah.
We kind of focus on recovery. So it's usually Monday is a middle-ish distance run, 5 to 7 miles. Tuesday's a workout. Those are usually end up, I mean, they're harder efforts, but they end up less in the mileage, you know, department. Wednesday's a little bit less. Thursday's back on a bit easier miles. Friday, another workout. And I like them to do their long run on Saturday so that they get off on Sunday completely, and they're off from Saturday morning all the way to Monday morning.
I love that, yeah.
But what the kids do is they, you know, they're like, they don't want to get up on Saturday. And so then they don't want to get up on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then they'll run 8 miles Sunday night.
Yeah.
And then they'll show up Monday morning for their second longest run of the week and just be trashed and not know why. And I feel terrible. And then Tuesday's workout sucks, right? Like in teaching kids how to recover. I mean, adults is hard enough, right? Like, but at least with an adult, I can go, you know better. Right. Like I've told you, I can be a much harsher coach with an adult. I can be like, hey, you're just being dumb. Like, stop. But a kid, you know, especially nowadays, like you just have to be. But man, they don't understand the power of recovery. And, you know, and I've done, you know, we do these, like the Fresh Junkie Fit Club thing is, you know, it's 100 exercises in 100 days and it's 20 minutes. And, you know, I've done it where I've done 130 runs in 100 days. I've done it.
Sure.
But some of those runs were 20 minutes at 13-minute pace.
Yeah.
Right. And people go, you ran 13-minute pace? I'm like, yes. Like it doesn't matter. Like it's working thing. Like you're getting a benefit out of it. But with those things, what I try to tell people is they're getting back to running is like, hey, walk a day, run a day. Especially at age, right? Like depending on how old you are, like I want to run 5 days a week when I'm training for running specific things. That's what I'd like to do. But, you know, I know that if I get on the bike for 90 minutes and I ride hard or whatever, like I'm getting a benefit from that. And it's actually recovery from running.
Yeah.
But putting you know, running 2 days in a row and putting a rest day. Like I try not to run more than 2 days in a row for me personally.
Sure. Yeah. Man.
But I'm 52. I mean, some people can handle it differently and I can handle it. I can do it, but at what cost?
Exactly. Right. And so we talk about consistency, but it's also a moving target, like you're saying, right? So, even for a high school kid, their body from their freshman year to their senior year, and sometimes we just have this expectation in high school. You know, we talk about life pressures for adults, but there are tons of other pressures for high school kids, right? And the pressure of a team itself and your coach and wanting to satisfy what your parents want you to do and all these things, right? But your body itself needs different things from the time that you're 14 to 17 or 18.
Yeah.
And so what they do for recovery might change. How much of it they need to do might change. And the same exists for us. The difference between a 27-year-old and a 34-year-old is, you know, there are big differences in terms of physically what they can tolerate. And so I never thought I would be a fan of walking. And it used to be a bad word in a lot of places when you were around runners, like, you walked in the middle of that long run,
right?
You know, and I've come to love walking, and it's built into a lot of the training that I have with my athletes, and all of those things that you feel like are just not pushing the needle to improve your fitness. Well, your fitness doesn't improve until you give it time to make that improvement, right? And so if you're constantly pumping the gas pedal, and don't hit the brakes, your body never has that opportunity to rebuild.
Well, and nobody's ever really I don't think that the industry has ever made a priority of stressing that a lot of the gains you get from a specific workout come in the recovery in the next day or so. Like that, it's not just running on tired legs the day after is improving you. It's actually like if you're recovering and doing active recovery, you're actually getting the gains from the 800s or whatever you did the day before.
I feel like there's been a huge focus recently. Maybe I'm just getting it in my feed because I've seen a lot of it, but recovery tools have become all the rage. And, you know, I think like a lot of gimmicks, recovery tools are great if you feel like they help you, and, you know, maybe they do. But the best recovery are the simple things, right? Like get some sleep,
sleep, eat well, and even moving. Like I tell kids after a hard event, go walk. Like it doesn't like just moving is going to be. I think the kids all want the massage guns and all the things, and my kids have them and whatnot. But I think that those kids don't realize that is just. I mean, they run 6 miles. They do some strides or whatever. They did some drills. They do some stretching at the end, and then they're sore in the afternoon, so they hit themselves with a gun. They're really just giving themselves another workout, right? Like, and they don't know that, right? Like, and so they're over. It's a fine line because my kids are so tight and they don't do. It's hard to get them to do anything. Mm-hmm. But then they go. It's from here all the way to the other extreme, and like they never just slow roll it the way they should.
I just got a text before I got here from a client who has been feeling sore. He's kind of hitting the crux of his marathon training, and he asked me if there was such a thing as too much foam rolling or a massage gun, and he said I've just been doing it all day because I've been sore.
Yeah, so you never recover.
Yes, right. It's just you're sensitizing those areas to where you just. It's like I think runners have this thing, and a lot of people do with working out. Unless it's uncomfortable, it's not working. Right. And I think we've all fallen prey to that. So it's something that we don't emphasize enough.
I agree. So I mean, the first thing I guess to run an injury free, I guess that whole chunk of that conversation is an emphasis on recovery, right?
Yep.
I would for sure agree with that. That's something that we just don't do enough of. I mean, for me, I have a number 2 if you don't want to go.
Yeah, go ahead.
But my number 2, which actually could be a number 1, is always having newish, up-to-date, correct footwear. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like that is the type of thing that you turn around. I got a kid right now who had plantar and was in a pair. He had run in Clifton's, Hoka Clifton's for a while. Great shoe, nothing wrong with it. He got plantar and he kept running in them.
Yeah.
And I had an old pair of Arahis, which is a light stability, but has some arch support in it. He's worn them for a week, and he's like, I feel better every run. Like that was my background, right? Like I was varsity sports employee number 6 or something like that. And so, I learned, and that's right when I started running. And I learned early on about the importance of footwear. I'm probably, and I've been lucky enough to work in the shoe industry and have hookups for footwear. It's not a terribly expensive sport, but I haven't had to buy a lot of shoes in my life.
Yeah.
At least not 100% full price. But like I am on the 200 mile, maybe 250.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm out. Like I'm on to another pair. They just,
Yes.
Some people are like 350, 450, like it's some badge of courage that they got like an extra 100 miles of it. I understand it's money. Like I'm not disregarding that, but I'm also, all right, what's more important? $60, for, or whatever, an extra pair or 2 pairs of shoes a year, or going to PT for 6 weeks. Yeah. What's more expensive?
Yeah.
And no offense to you.
No. I agree.
You know.
Yeah. And I think that traditionally, and the shoe, this too, the shoe game has changed so much in terms of how they're made, how they're marketed, and what they do for us. And I think that for a long time it was 300 to 500 miles, get out of them, right? 300 miles. And I think that things are changing. In some ways, shoes are lasting not as long, depending on what you get. And in some ways, we're finding that sometimes the shoe does less than we thought it did if you don't have the right mechanics in your feet.
Right.
The shoes sometimes aren't the problem. It's the foot, ankle, knee, it's the person, right? But I think that the rise of, the super shoe and the max stack on these shoes certainly creates some challenges depending on a person's structure, but you're right. If you don't have the right tools to run healthy, you're starting yourself off behind the 8 ball, right? And so I agree. I think that there are very few tools you need to run.
Right.
And your shoes is just about the only thing that you actually do need, unless you're a barefoot person. But
oh my God, don't get me started. I lived through that whole. I was working in the running shoe business
shoe store,
when that came about, and it was the most. It was the most exhausting. I remember a guy coming through. I was in Huntsville, and some guy coming through, and this is not a testament to his time and time being the end all be all, but he came in and it was on concrete. His feet were bloody, and he'd run a half, and I looked at the clock, and he had like come through at like 2:15 or something, and I was like, I mean, like, we're glorifying the fact that you ran, like, you could probably run 1:45 if you put some shoes on.
It's craziness, yeah.
I was like, what are we doing here? Like, this is what we're glorifying. Yeah. But I'm glad that trend is. I mean, look, I have my kids run barefoot on the baseball field.
Sure.
Once a week, do some strides, get that feel for the ground. That, like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I'm not going to dig any deeper into that. All right, one last thing before we get out of here. Give us one more key, maybe one. Is there do you have an exercise or a thing that you think that every runner should do either prior to or after every run that helps them stay injury free?
Yeah, I mean, we were starting to go down the road a little bit, maybe with strength training, but aside from doing some maintenance work on your body, I find that less and less people are actually warming up before they go run.
I agree.
And whether that's related to time and you got to squeeze it in because you have a family or you have a job or you got to get to school, or whether that's just purely feeling like you don't need to do it or are too lazy to do it, the difference between a runner who warms up and gets into the run versus one who doesn't, I think is absolutely. I think it's huge, especially somebody that may be on the border of dealing with a tendon issue or an ache or a pain that's kind of there but kind of isn't. Those are the ones that really are going to feel the effects of not warming up. But over time, not warming up to me is extremely detrimental to your training.
So when you're talking a warm up, are you talking like, I'm going to go tomorrow, I'm running 5 miles easy, right? Yeah. So I would, and I used to be religious about this. I had a back problem for a while, and I think it was all hip tightness related. But I used to run the first mile and a half, and then stop and stretch, leg swings, and then run the rest of it.
Sure.
Maybe it was, so maybe it was a 1.5 mile to 2 mile warm up, and then run the next 3 miles. My pace always dropped by 20 seconds a mile with the same heart rate, same effort, right?
Yeah.
I used to be pretty religious about it. Or, I mean, would you still, are you speaking more of a more like, hey, walk for 5 minutes, do these 4 or 5 exercises, then start the 5 mile run?
Yeah.
That's more what you're referring to?
Yeah. So everybody that I coach, whether they do it begrudgingly or whether they learn to love it over time, they have somewhere from a 5 to 8 minute walking warm up.
Yeah.
Whether they want to do some drills or some squats or some lunges or some kicks, totally up to them, but I insist that they do a walking warm-up, and that's somewhere between 3 to 3.5 miles per hour. So you're not just strolling, but you're putting in a little bit of effort. That gradual increase in your heart rate and your breathing rate and just getting your mind ready, I think, is absolutely crucial to having a good run.
We for our high school, we used to, depending on the time frame, because we had, when school started, right, we work out before school. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to give them as much sleep as possible because I know they weren't going to go to bed early. Mm-hmm. So, I was like, y'all can get here at 7.
Yep.
And like the first 2 things that went was, a 1K easy jog followed by drills and core. Mm-hmm. And then do the mileage.
Yep.
That was the first thing that went away. Mm-hmm. And then when, then I'd have, everybody coming back at different paces, you're never going to get the same, like, I don't have time. You can't get a good core workout then, right? Because everybody's coming back and they're trickling in and they're trying to get ready. So we have instituted on easy days, especially, and we do it on workout days. We, of course, always did it. Mm-hmm. But even on our easy run days, we're warming up. So those are great. So, again, to kind of review, recovery.
Yes.
Making sure your footwear, you're in the correct shoes, as well as they're fresh enough. They're not like squished. Like, there's no badge of honor in having beat up. I used to be on the running shoe forums, and I would just get so mad at these kooks who would be like, oh, look, I got 700 miles out of these Vaporflies. Yeah. I'm like, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
But good shoes, and that you've been fitted for them hopefully at a shoe store. I mean, I'm sure you could probably give advice. I mean, I know I've done it long enough that I can point people in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I love the people at the shoe stores. I think that they see tens and hundreds of people walk through their doors every day.
They see more feet than we ever will.
Exactly.
And then finally, a good warm up.
Yep.
How much of a warm down?
I don't prioritize it. And so, generally speaking, I think people will walk for a couple of minutes after their run and maybe sit. But I think that more than anything, just gradually cool yourself down. Don't go plop down and then stay there for the next hour.
Right.
If you're gonna crash after a workout, sit for a couple of minutes, get up, move around for 10, 15 minutes, and then go about your day. But I think that there has to be just some continued, easy, gentle movement.
See, now I can't stop. Would you, we do a stretching routine after each of our runs.
Yeah.
It's pretty much static stuff. When would you say the right time to roll out is? At the end of a run, at the end of the day, then go, or just, do it at the end of the day before you go to bed?
Yeah.
Both? Neither?
So rolling out is generally helpful because of this neuromuscular sensation that you get, right? There's very little evidence to suggest that it actually changes a trigger point or lengthens or stretches anything. What you feel is basically your nervous system relaxing, getting like a massage, and it's a good feeling. To me, I've found it most effective to do it in the evening, like before I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
It's a relaxing thing for me. I don't know that there's a ton of research on what the best time is. If it was up to me, I would suggest people do it either in the evening when they're sitting around reading a book or watching TV, or to do it before their run.
I was about to say, for a while when I had some issues, I would roll out for 10 minutes or so before as a form of a warm up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that seemed to help me as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you again for being on the Tempo and sharing some knowledge with us. I think we're gonna have you on a couple more times, and we're gonna keep digging deeper into all these things. And I think these episodes are gonna be longer and longer because I get into into this stuff that we're talking about, and every time we go down a certain way, I'm like, wait, but what about?
No, this is fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, and y'all have a great day.